And we are going to proceed to our final presentation. So this presentation is building an income floor, investing in and supporting young adults through a guaranteed income. And our presenters will be, and sorry if I get the names wrong and everything, but Catherine Caggett, Greg Fisher, and Julie Sanchez.
Hi everyone. Good morning to you all, or I guess almost, yeah, it's still morning, I guess, in Utah. Good morning to you all. I'm Catherine Kagat. I'm from Mayors and Counties for Guaranteed Income. And I will say we do have some different presenters now than the one Brandon mentioned. So our speakers today will be Daryl McDavid from the Net Growth Movement out in Alameda County, California. Julie Sanchez from the Santa Fe LEAD program in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And then we have some pilot participants, Samantha Davis from Net Growth Movement, and I think shortly Raquel Ariola from Santa Fe LEAD will be joining us as well. So first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers and the youth panelists for and everyone involved for inviting us to this summit. We're really looking forward to all the conversations and insights that that we can gain from this experience. So yeah, and just to give you an overview of the panel that we're doing, I think I'm going to do a share screen. Give me 1 second. So just to give you an overview of what we're going to be presenting, so we will be providing a description of the GI landscape on a national level. Then we'll be describing GI programs and policies focused on young adults. And then we'll be presenting case studies, in this case, the Net Growth Movement and Santa Fe LEAP. And I mentioned the speakers. So there's Daryl, Samantha, Julie, and Raquel. And because this is a panel on guaranteed income, I just kind of want to briefly define what we mean by guaranteed income. So a guaranteed income is a recurring cash payment. In most cases, it is a monthly cash payment given directly to individuals. It is unconditional with no strings attached and has no work requirements. A guaranteed income is also meant to supplement rather than replace the existing social safety net, and it can be one of many approaches that contribute to advancing racial and gender equity. And just to give you an overview of Mayors for a Guaranteed Income and Counties for a Guaranteed Income, our organization is built on the work of Mayor Michael Tubbs when he was the then mayor of Stockton, California from 2017 to 2021. And during that time, he launched the Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration, otherwise known as SEED, which basically gave $500 a month to Stockton residents for 18 months. And Mayors for a Guaranteed Income was founded in June 2020. And at the time that it started, we had about 11 mayors, and that has since grown to 150 members within our network across over 30 states. And then in February 2023, we launched Counties for a Guaranteed Income, and now it has 29 county elected officials in its network across 13 different states. And we have in our network more than 50 pilots, and of those 50 pilots, more than 25 are still active, meaning they're still dispersing funds. And the coolest thing that we've seen so far in terms of like the movement, the momentum is in the beginning, and maybe Julie can probably speak more about this, and maybe Daryl as well, but in the beginning, there was a lot of resistance or anxiety over using public dollars. And so a lot of the earlier pilots were using private funds from donors. And what we're seeing now is like there's a greater acceptance of using public dollars, and actually most of our pilots, over half of our pilots, uses predominantly public dollars. And because it's public dollars, you can go a little bit larger in scale because they tend to be higher. And just some of our policy goals. Our primary goal is having a federal guaranteed income policy that really provides an income floor. And the path that we have taken towards that goal is to create the coalition, Mayors for a Guaranteed Income and Counties for a Guaranteed Income, that advocate for a guaranteed income. And we also, within our network, as I mentioned earlier, we have mayors and county elected officials who have implemented pilots in their jurisdictions. And aside from that, we also advocate for direct cash transfer programs and policies that are kind of like guaranteed income. So reimagining the current federal the tax credits so that they are more like guaranteed income. So for example, modernizing the EITC so that it's given us a monthly payment rather than a lump sum after you do your taxes, or making the expanded child tax credit permanent, which we saw in the pandemic they introduced, which was essentially $300 a month per child. And so we're hoping that we have a policy that makes that permanent, not just during a pandemic. And the other thing is to improve the social safety net programs so that it's centered more towards trust and dignity rather than what we have at the moment, which tends to be prescriptive and asks people to constantly prove their eligibility to those programs. So just to provide you a kind of national level look on what the guaranteed income landscape looks like. So we have had direct cash transfers experiments in the past, in the late 60s and early 70s, that are somewhat like guaranteed income out in Seattle and Denver, called SIME and DIME. We still have the existing Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend, which comes at a lump sum payment to Alaskan residents. And then we have the Eastern Band of Cherokee Casinos dividend program, which is kind of like the Alaska Permanent Fund dividend. So I'm not going to delve too much into details about those programs, just in the interest of time, but we will send around some resources. So if you wanted to read more about those programs, then you're more than welcome to. Other guaranteed income programs that are more recent, like I mentioned, is the expanded child tax credit. That was, I think that was 2020, but during the pandemic, it was a $300 a month for 12 months to each child. And that one, I think it's like it started to dwindle after you make $75,000, and then you could get those funds up until you hit the $200,000 income mark. And that expired in December, I guess, 2021. I might be I might be a year off on this date. I think it's December 2021. But yeah, so we no longer have that. We had a chance to make it permanent, but we didn't get the votes in Senate. We know who to blame. So and then we have some, like I mentioned, we have 50 pilots across our network, and reports are starting to come out from this jurisdiction. So some examples of evaluation of pilots reports that are coming out is, of course, the one from Stockton that came out about 2 years ago. The People's Prosperity Pilot out of St. Paul, their report came out just 2 months ago. And then we have Patterson's Guaranteed Income Program. That report's available, so it's Cambridge Rise's report. And Santa Fe Leap, which Julie's going to be speaking about today, their report is going to be out, I guess, this month. Right, Julie? So please watch out for those reports. And again, within this slide presentation, we do have a slide which has links to where you can find these papers. And then the kind of very important thing as well that lets us learn more about guaranteed income and the impact of such programs are the storytelling cohorts that has been established in many of the pilots. And storytelling cohort members are essentially pilot participants who have consented to sharing their stories publicly, which we are very lucky to have and to hear from them. And they really provide the stories behind the data. So yeah, and they participate in webinars like these, and interviews. Some have started podcasts, but really giving us like all the human experience of the impact of guaranteed income. And based on the reports that we've seen of guaranteed income demonstrations, we are seeing trends in outcomes, largely positive trends, right? So they get spent on basic needs, mainly food and housing, and contrary to the unproductive narratives that are out there that says that people are going to stop working if they get monthly payments. guaranteed income has had little to no effect on work effort. In many cases, it's actually improved people's employment situation. So allowing them to either finish school or some kind of training or get some kind of license that then allows them to gain full-time employment, or there is a move from unemployment to part-time employment or even self-employment. Uh, the other outcomes are it reduces stress and improves mental health. It improves parenting quality and children's outcomes, and it can improve housing. And that means housing stability, but also people moving from one type of housing and then a better quality type of housing. And just to give you some examples of transition age youth programs and policies. So pilots within our network that focuses on young adults are Baltimore Young Family Success Fund. They focus on parents who are 18 to 24 years old. You Lift from Louisville, Kentucky, and they focus on 18 to 24-year-old residents living in three particular neighborhoods in Louisville. And then there's the New Orleans Guaranteed Income Program, focusing on 16 to 24-year-old residents in New Orleans that are not working and also not currently at school. And then you'll hear more about Net Growth Movement today and also Santa Fe Leap. And then some policy examples that have been introduced are SB 333, the California Success, Opportunity, and Academic Resilience, or SOAR, as it's known. And it's a guaranteed income that will be providing $1,000 a month for 4 months to unhoused students in California who are graduating from high school. And the aim is to provide these graduating high school students money to enroll in college or training programs to essentially kind of be that bridge from when they end high school and then whenever they start either a job or school. And just last week, it was presented as a budget request to California's Senate Budget Subcommittee 3 on Health and Human Services. And we should know by mid-May on whether that's going to be in the budget. So we're really hoping that policymakers invest in the right thing. I know California has a deficit, but we know that if there's a will, there's always a way to find money somewhere. It's just a matter of making the choice. And we all know that, poverty is a policy choice. So if if people don't invest in the youth, then that's a choice that they're making. And so we're hoping that there is a political will to get something like this done. And so far, it doesn't really have that much opposition in terms of policy. It really has more to do with finding the money to fund the program. And then there's HR 7547, the Young Adult Tax Credit Act, and that was introduced by Congressman Morgan McGarvey from Kentucky's 3rd Congressional District and Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman from New Jersey's 12th Congressional District. And the bill proposes a universal $500 a month payment for all 18 to 24-year-olds in the United States. And as stated in the bill, the cash transfer would allow young adults to access capital earlier in their lives, to better afford necessities, or otherwise build their lives and be more integrated into the tax system. And just to let you know, the SB 333 was introduced by Senator Dave Cortese. And so I'm gonna end there on a kind of positive note in terms of efforts that are being made to make guaranteed income permanent, at least for young adults. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to Daryl McDavid, who's gonna talk more about Net Growth Movement. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Catherine. Good morning, afternoon for folks. I know folks are all around the country. Great to be here with everyone. I'm excited to share more about the Net Growth Movement. The Net Growth Movement is a guaranteed income pilot, as Catherine mentioned, and like most guaranteed income pilots, we focus on a specific subset of a population. So in terms of transition age youth, the Net Growth Movement specifically focus on supporting former foster youth. So I'll start with some of the motivations of what's really drove us to start this pilot. And it really came from what we know around some of the systemic issues that young former foster youth face as they're transitioning out of foster care. That has to do with the majority of former foster youth entering adulthood in a heightened survival mode. During that time, they're often expending the majority of their energy and efforts to simply obtain basic necessities. And they're typically doing that with little to no financial or familial support. The overall impact that that has is that it directly impacts their ability to forecast and plan and build a future of their own design. It typically directly prevents them from reaching their goals or makes reaching their goals more challenging than it should be for a young adult. And it can often prevent them from creating opportunities for them to thrive in their lives. So some of the desired outcomes that we are working to address are preventing this population from falling through the cracks, addressing some of the ways that the foster care system is broken in terms of how it prepares young people for adulthood, and lifting young people coming out of the foster care system out of opportunity and intentionally connecting them with opportunities. We're looking to address the inequities and that disproportionately impact this population and demonstrate how underserved communities can thrive when unconditional support meets unlimited potential. And so all of those were words that were taken from the draft that was presented when this pilot was initially funded. And that entire process was driven by all former foster youth who had experience in the foster care system. So we can go to the next slide. Before I share the next piece around the implementation process, just wanted to kind of highlight these. Were all things that the young people who were involved in the design of this pilot wanted to focus on in terms of outcomes. So really quickly, we wanted to decrease isolation, stigma, debt, self-doubt, obstacles to self-discovery, all things that young people coming out of the foster care system experience at very high rates. And we wanted to work to increase housing stability, education and skills, access and support, build and solidify a network within the foster care community, improve mental health, and increase confidence and motivation, and provide agency for these young people. And then the next slide. As we were starting this journey of building the proposal that was eventually passed, these were just some of the words that came to mind for folks. So before I go more into this, I just wanted to kind of like really bring the spirit of the young adults who led this effort into this. I'm excited to lead this pilot, and it was funded by the county, but for me, the work that these young adults did and poured into this is really what drives me to continue to put my best effort into leading this pilot, and really kind of just keeps me on my toes as I'm doing the work. So yeah, next slide. So I'll take a bit of a step back and talk a little bit more about the design. So our pilot specifically was designed as a way to honor a former Alameda County supervisor whose name was Wilma Chan. So one of her, someone who previously worked for her, his name was Dave Brown. He was the county supervisor. Wilma Chan unfortunately passed away. And before that, within her work, she was very passionate about creating opportunities for former foster youth and supporting vulnerable populations. And so this process in terms of encouraging Alameda County to start a guaranteed income pilot was something that was done in her honor. And it was very important for Dave Brown in honoring Wilma Chan to make sure that this was led completely by those with lived experience. And so there was a consultant that was hired to kind of really structure and lead the process. But outside of that, the majority of this work, the perspectives, the insights that informed this work came from a design team of 12 former foster youth who came together over the course of about 4 months. And we did several things in order to decide how we wanted to structure this, why was it important, and then to ultimately present it to the County Board of Supervisors. So some of the things that we did during those 5 months to build the presentation where we met with service providers and other advocates. We interviewed leaders of existing guaranteed income pilots, including SEED, and we held focus groups, conducted a survey, reflected on our own lived experience, and all of that is what was poured into the plan for the pilot. So ultimately, the plan that we submitted was approved by the Board of Supervisors in July of 2022. It was approved in the form of a partnership, and that partnership was between Alameda County Social Services Agency and Bay Area Community Services, which is the nonprofit running it. So the Social Services Agency provided the funding, and BACS is running the pilot. And just to reiterate Catherine's point, that is one of the exciting things that came out of this, and that we wanted to emphasize that partnership. It's really allowed us to create this very unique design for this program, and it's been exciting to have that support from the county as we move through this work. So I was one of the original members of the design team, and that's really how I found out about this work. After our plan was approved, I was tapped and asked to actually put my hat in the ring to lead this work. And it was always important for us in terms of that lived experience perspective, that was really something that was a thread throughout the work. And so it wasn't, I wasn't really in a position to say no once it was offered, and I'm excited to be doing this work. And the other design team members do continue to support this, the work through of the pilot via an ad hoc advisory board. So they often provide perspectives and guidance as we move through the work. So another difference with our pilot is that we did not have an application process. We actually had a pre-selected list of folks who were selected to be in the pilot based on a set age range of young adults who had been in the Alameda County foster care system and were exiting extended foster care in 2021 as they were turning 21. And so our outreach and enrollment process happened between September of 2022 and January of 2023, where we reached out to those folks, let them know that they were eligible. A lot of that was done through connecting with other service providers that work directly with this population in order to obtain contact information and get connected with them so that they could be connected to the pilot. And then in February 2023, we started to make our first payments, which were distributed and also distributed a retroactive payment for January of 2023. So as we work to implement it, we've moved through the pilot, just a couple of challenges. Time, of course, with pilots, the timing and the speed at which these things move. Again, I started my role in September, and we launched the pilot in September 2022. We launched the pilot in January of 2023. So it gave us about 4 months to like really get up and running. And so just that time, that piece of the time, and then just how fast time is moving. We were blessed to be able to create a 2-year pilot. So we are still within our pilot. We're in the 2nd year, but time is moving extremely fast. So I can only imagine for folks who led a 1-year pilot, how quickly that time must have went by, both for the folks leading it and for folks who were in the pilot. So just time is you blink and a whole year is gone. So that definitely, we felt it. And in terms of the outreach process, because we had that pre-selected group of folks, and one of the challenges with foster youth is that they do, there's a challenge in terms of stability, right? They're typically in this stage of their life, they're moving around a lot, their numbers are changing, and they don't have many solidified connections. And so the outreach process was a bit difficult in terms of reaching young people, having verified contact information or previous addresses. So definitely just added another layer of a challenge to getting folks into the pilot. Really quickly, some successful strategies that I do believe that we applied that have helped to lead our pilot to success. Learning from other pilots, learning from the SEED pilot. We learned from another pilot down in Santa Clara that was also working with former foster youth. If I'm not mistaken, I think we spoke with Julia's team as well, and learned about her pilot, which was really supportive. So learning from other pilots versus trying to reinvent the wheel really allowed us to just hit the ground running. The government CBO partnership, again, I think made a lot of sense and allowed us to, again, have this be led from that lived experience perspective, which has been extremely impactful. And having a board of supervisors champion was really helpful for us to get approval and support from the rest of the board of supervisors, and just walking us through that process of what it takes to get that support really helped us to be able to be effective in that process. And again, really just have to continue to emphasize that lived experience leadership part was really impactful. Both myself being hired with lived experience, and then we are also able, as a pilot, started to hire 2 coordinators who also had lived experience in the system as well. And so that lived experience thread has been, we really want to keep that alive. In terms of outcomes, we are doing an evaluation of our pilot. Again, we are in our 2nd year, so the outcomes are not ready yet. We actually just closed our first survey yesterday. It's going to be a 2-part survey. The first survey capturing what that first year in the pilot was like, and then the second survey just capturing that full experience and their experience within the 2nd year. And then really what we want to emphasize for our pilot is really that, to Catherine's point, the storytelling piece. We want to make sure that when folks are looking at the impact of this, that they focus more on the stories of young people and their experiences, more than the data that's going to come out of this. So we are planning to do a narrative crafting workshop where participants are going to have an opportunity to really share the impact of their experience, and also hopefully we'll be able to do some visioning around what a permanent GI policy for former foster youth could look like for in the future. And with that being said, like I said, the most important perspectives here are the perspectives of young adults and the folks who are going through these pilots. So I'll pause here and I want to give Samantha a few minutes just to share a bit about what her experience has been like being in the net growth movement.
Thank you, Daryl. Hi, everyone. It's Samantha. My experience in the net growth movement has really been like life changing to me. Like Daryl said, it was challenging to reach out to the participants of the program because a lot of former foster youth are in just like survival mode, moving around, changing numbers and things like that. So in the beginning, when Daryl reached out to me, I believe it was a phone call, and it just took from there. And like he explained to me the process of the program and what it is. And at the time that literally he called me, I just got something that foster youth have after they transition out at 18 is called THP Transitional Living Program. And I had just got removed out of my transitional living program and had to like move back in with my mom. And that was even somewhere I was supposed to like really be staying. And then when Daryl told me like, hey, like we're having this net growth movement program and explained to me what it is, it was like just like literally like so much relief like came off of me because I was like, wow, like I just had moved, I didn't have a job or anything. So I was able to just find stability and like finding housing, knowing that okay, like just being like literally like basic necessities, like I can go to Target and like go get like body wash or just things that I need. And a lot of foster youth really do like slip through the cracks. I was just literally personally talking to Daryl the other day, like, hey, like I feel like I could talk to my therapist like so much about how I feel like growing up in the foster care system, but having that community where other foster youth are able to share their experience is really something like meaningful. And I also feel like through this program and this pilot, it gives like a sense of community as well. It's on top of the financial support. And I was able to, with that, my funding, I was able to find stability with housing a little bit better, and also do a internship at a law firm, and that was like a super good experience for me that I probably wasn't like gonna be able to do if I didn't have stability in housing and or be able to pay my phone bills for people to like reach out to me and things of that nature. So with my experience with the net growth movement has just been like super just beyond helpful and meaningful. And it being like led by former foster youth means more to me because I'm dealing with people that actually have experienced what I've gone through or what I'm currently going through. And I think that overall, just for having community for previous foster youth, having a voice, being able to say I've been here and this is how like we're gonna change it. I just never heard of any type of pilot like this, and I just it's really changed my life. So yeah.
And thank you so much for sharing that, Samantha. It really means a lot. Got to give Samantha an extra thanks because she really found out about this opportunity very last minute and was just willing to jump in and share and support the pilot. So thank you, Samantha. And then really quickly, I will wrap with just our pilot is still going, but we have learned some lessons and are continuing to learn lessons. So some of the things that we implied in terms of like considerations when we started to build the pilot that are really important, and some of the things that that Samantha is speaking to as well. The first piece is that the eligibility was just based on having foster care experience in Alameda County and not currently residing in the county. The reason that we made that decision is that the reason that we are trying to do this is that, for one, in the Bay Area, the high cost of living. There are many of our young people who no longer live in Alameda County, not by choice, but because been pushed out by the cost of living. And so we were able to design this pilot in a way where we're able to support folks who are in the county, but also a small handful of folks who have been pushed out to other parts of the state. Even a couple of folks who have had to go to other states in order to find a more a cost of living that is more conducive to where they're at in their lives. And we also really were intentional again about considering that minimum amount that we offered them in terms of that cost of living piece and the challenges that we know that they're navigating and the time that we had. So we wanted to really find the right balance between not requesting too much and making our ask unrealistic, and not asking for too little, which would have not have the impact of creating that space, that breathing room and space for these young adults. In terms of improvements and changes, as we think about what the future of GI could look like, especially for former foster youth, really intentional to do some planning at the beginning around what does the end of the pilot look like. For many of these young adults, they're going to experience a loss of a very critical financial support. And we have to work intentionally with them to prepare for that. The other piece that I'll speak to is that, we talked about guaranteed income being an income floor. And within this work that we've seen that it can be. It can immediately start to act as an income floor from the moment that they start to receive those payments. But our work, especially with these young adults coming out of the foster care system, is to move them beyond minimal survival and towards thriving. And so I just want to note as I end that we have to do more than just give them this money. That money needs to be paired with other supportive services, as Catherine mentioned, such as housing, employment, mental health. So guaranteed income isn't meant to replace other social services, as we've spoken to. It's meant to be another layer. And this is one of those layers that can really focus on empowering a young adult and giving them the agency to make the best choices for themselves and their families. And yeah, with that, I will go ahead and wrap. But yeah, thank you all for your time. And I think next we're going to be passing it on to Julie.
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you, Samantha, for your presentation. I'm Julie Sanchez. I'm the Youth and Family Services Division Director for the City of Santa Fe, and I have Raquel joining me as well as somebody who was a participant in our pilot project. So the Santa Fe LEAP program, so it actually stands for Learn, Earn, and Achieve, is a guaranteed income program that is in a partnership with the Santa Fe Community College. Our populations that we were targeting for this work were young parents ages 18 to actually 30, although a majority of the folks in our cohort were 25 and under. We did have 100 participants in our first cohort. We did do $400 in a guaranteed income over 12 months. And we use that, we chose that number mainly because 40% of families in the US would not be able to absorb a $400 surprise expense. Our program was one of the first out of 24, I always get this wrong, so I always look to Catherine, selected for the Mayors for Guaranteed Income under Mayor Weber's administration. We started our pilot program in 2021, and it ended actually in September of 2022. The reason we chose that population, one, because our administration, when our mayor came on board, he really wanted to focus on young families, and he really wanted to look at a 2-generational approach to addressing issues of poverty. As we know, poverty is intergenerational and has a direct impact on not only the parents, but also the children of the parents. When we looked at the data at our community college, our young parents actually had an astronomical amount of, or an astronomical dropout rate for their programs at the community college. And so they were far less likely to complete their certification program. They were, again, far more likely to drop out. And a lot of that could be attributed to expenses related to childcare, child rearing, and other issues. So ultimately, our pilot, we really wanted to look at our student parents completing their certification program and associate's degree. We were also looking at indicators of health, fiscal security, safety, and the ultimate goal of our project, of course, is to break the cycles of poverty. So our process, so we actually partnered with the community college, expanding opportunities for young families. That was a Casey Families Program funded cohort. And we actually met with them on a separate survey of young parents. And we were like, wow, this is actually an incredible group of people. And, we want to work with this population. So how can we lean on this group of participants to help us design what this program could look like? And so we had about 15 to 18 young student parents who helped us design this program. There were 19 discussions that were held about the parents' education and career goals of the children, as well as their support system, and then the barriers they faced. So in total, across those discussions, we had 107 parents who participated. And I like to say that the cohort gave us a list of requirements, but really they were kind of a list of demands, like this will not be successful if you do not do this. And of course, we're there to listen and to design based on their feedback. So one of the big asks of them, and this is kind of a short segment of that list, was to include all children, not just biological children. One of the interesting dynamics about New Mexico and Santa Fe is a lot of our young parents were taking on caregiving responsibilities for their siblings, for their cousins' kids, for a lot of kids informally. So these are, we consider it kinship care, but they're not involved in the child welfare system. And this is something that I've done also personally, raised my siblings' kids without getting them involved in the courts. And so our young parents really wanted to make sure that even though these children are not their biological children, that they're still included as part of this program. Of course, making sure that everything is bilingual, including all the applications and forms, and then making sure, because they're young parents, that there was flexible training and onboarding, and we'll kind of go through that too next. And then, of course, being aware of the benefits cliff. That was something we hadn't been aware of. A lot of the questions came up around, like, how is this guaranteed income going to impact my SNAP benefits? How is it going to impact my childcare subsidy? And so we, myself and a consultant, really dug deep, met with like all the cabinet secretaries and their secretaries and deputies to make sure that we had the exact numbers, to make sure that individuals who are enrolled in our program weren't going to be losing their benefits. So some of our biggest challenges was in the research. Because we were one of the early cohorts, we were working closely with UPenn. We originally had a really intimate sized cohort, which I think was around 25 students. And because of the research, we really needed to expand the pool of our participants. And that was something we had not anticipated. And so we really had to work very closely with the community college to expand our pool of participants to 100. With that amount of participants, we had to reduce our monthly assistance, but we did end up getting a lot more robust data. So it was kind of a, kind of a catch, but ended up working out in our favor. Some of our other challenges was our support from city council. While we had a majority of individuals on our city council who really saw the benefits of this program, we had a few very vocal advocates that were against any direct cash transfer programs. They kind of followed that, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, work through hard, we don't want to fund people sitting around eating bonbons, which is something our mayor likes to say, which is, according to the data, exactly the opposite of what was happening. But we had to make a really compelling argument to our city councilors to make sure that we were able to fully fund and get this program running. And so thanks to Catherine and her team who kind of helped us with that early advocacy. And luckily it was just one vote, so it passed. And we were able to get the program moving. But yeah, that was definitely an early challenge. And then of course, the development of our survey and the approval process, because we were working with a university, we had to go through what's called an IRB process. And then we didn't realize that the community college has their own IRB process. So we were like going through double IRB processes, which is took double the amount of time. So that was definitely a challenge. And then of course, implementation. There was, various different things that we didn't think about that we just kind of had to navigate, including making sure that all the stipends were getting out on time and making sure that there were options, because not a majority, but a good percentage of our students, which I think around 15%, were in mixed document households. And so we had to make sure that we were able to get the cash assistance directly to those households, because they weren't eligible to use bank accounts, because to get a bank account, you need a social security number. And so we got really creative with our cash transfer software group, and we're able to give out cash cards that were reloaded year or month after month, which I think was really great for those families. And in terms of our successes, because we are the Southwest, this was not our first rodeo, so I had to say that. We've been doing cash transfer programs. As soon as the pandemic started, we did direct cash transfers to community members who were impacted by the pandemic. And so we kind of had a flow for how this work was done. And then we had a lot of partners who were also a part of this work. And so it went as smoothly as it could. So that was definitely a success. And of course, our mayor was our champion. This is probably one of the highlights of his administration, and he's incredibly proud of this work and he wants to see it continue. And then our successes a year out, overall, we've had a lot of public support for this work. And I think the population that we're targeting was a huge benefit for our community, because it's not, it's two generations, it's both parents enrolled in the community college, and it's also impacting their children. And then of course, our other successes is we have a lot of partners who are advocating for this kind of work. We have Somos Un Pueblo Unido, who did a statewide guaranteed income focusing on immigrant families. Voices for Children is helping to do evaluation on their programs, and just a lot of groups all over New Mexico who are doing this kind of work. So that's definitely a huge success. And I can't talk about successes, of course, without talking about our amazing participants who've been a part of this program. And so we'll hear a little bit from Raquel, but I also want to share Leslie's story, who is one of our participants in this program.
El programa de LIV es una ayuda económicamente para los estudiantes que estaban de bajos recursos. Cuando me dijeron que fui seleccionada, para mí fue un alivio porque comenzaba con mis quimioterapias. Las quimioterapias tienen algo que pues daña el cuerpo, entonces le dicen a uno que tiene que tomar ciertas vitaminas para que no sea tan drástico y ayude. Cada 16 de mes nos daban $400 y lo podíamos usar para lo que fuera, si fuera biles, o sea, no teníamos límite de nada. Me ayudó a pagar por las vitaminas, poder proveer una computadora para poder seguir estudiando y una escaneadora también para poder escanear todos mis trabajos. Entonces esta fue una gran ayuda. Yo digo que sí hacen una gran diferencia en cada persona que ayudan, porque es algo que eso va a quedar sembrado y va a decir, wow, me brindaron esta ayuda y de ahí, de esa ayuda salí adelante. Todos tenemos luchas en la vida, a lo mejor unas peores que otras, pero mi mayor consejo es seguir adelante. Mientras tenemos vida hay esperanza y hay que luchar mientras haya vida.
And so one of the interesting things about our guaranteed income pilot project was we saw not only just the students being able to address their immediate needs, but they were also able to address the immediate needs that came up in emergent situations. And so part of Leslie's story, which was really compelling, is that, you know, she received her guaranteed income. She had a cancer diagnosis and then was able to use her guaranteed income to not only get the medication that she needed for her chemotherapy, but also be able to get the hope and the security that the guaranteed income provided to be able to complete her certification program. And so she graduated with her certification in teaching. And now that she's in remission, she's working in the community teaching, which is a fantastic outcome and what we want to see with this kind of pilot project. As Catherine had stated, we are releasing our final report at the end of May, which is really exciting, and that'll be posted on the MGI website. We have a second cohort currently. We're working with a local university here in New Mexico, which is the University of New Mexico, and they're going to be doing an evaluation, and we hope to get that data released in fall of 2025. In terms of positive outcomes, just a couple of things that we have gleaned from our current data report is students are able to handle a $400 financial emergency, which includes getting things like credit cards paid down. And they're also able to afford expenses that they weren't able to afford. One of the really interesting things about our cohort, and a really telltale sign about New Mexico and Santa Fe in general, is a lot of our participants were able to kind of pay it forward. Like they had additional cash and they were able to help support their community in helping their family or friends or neighbors effectively cover their emergent needs. And so there was a lot of this kind of sharing of wealth in a way in our community. And one other interesting data point that we received was a lot of our student parents were able to improve their housing and also also improve the housing situations that they had. And this was both immediately, but also 6 months post being in the program, that they were still able to maintain that housing. So it really did prove to be of a huge benefit to both the youth, to both the parents and their children. And I just want to go ahead and yield and give the floor to Raquel, who was a participant in our program, to speak a little bit more about her participation.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Raquel, and I just want to share a little bit. I won't take up too much time. The impact that being a Santa Fe LEAP had on myself and my life personally was I am a single mother of a 6-year-old, and I was actually able to quit a second job and continue education, which for me was really important. It helped put me ahead, not only just in the time that I've been receiving the money, but in the long run, because I'm going to be able to get a better job with a degree in education. It helped, like has been said before, about those little emergencies that come up that sometimes we don't always expect them, but they could be detrimental if you don't, have the help that you may need. So that guaranteed income has been really helpful. And there's times you don't need it, so you can save it, but it's there for when you do need it. If I could give any advice to decision makers about this guaranteed income, it would be possibly maybe a little bit more money, but the 400 was perfect. And also the duration of the program. I think one year is great, and I don't want to sound ungrateful because I'm beyond grateful, but after 1 year, I don't feel like 1 year is enough. It came and it goes so quickly. And yeah, just really the time is the only decision that I would, or thing that I would have to give advice about. Any changes or improvement, I think everything has been great, and I once again, I'm grateful to be part of this program.
Thank you, Raquel. And then of course for us, we have our own lessons learned. One of the main considerations we had was of course making our onboarding virtual. Again, thinking about being flexible and creative with our student parents at the time. We did our onboarding. We actually partnered with one of our local universities, our School of Social Work students who are still enrolled, getting their BSW. We recruited them and we're like, hey, we want to help you get your direct service learning hours. Like, come help us onboard. And so we had a mixture of both Spanish speaking and English speaking students who were helping with our onboarding. We did it all virtually or over the phone. And then of course that helped us increase our capacity. And then one of our other big considerations is we are paying you for your time. So not only our Highlands University students, but also our participants. We're like, we want you to come speak with us. We want you to, anything that we had, we're paying you for your time because your time is valuable. Our potential improvements and changes for this program. Of course, we always think about a gradual offboarding of funding, and I wish that was something that we could have considered in the very beginning, and kind of titrate the amount of funding as somebody is getting closer to that 1 year mark. Building in financial literacy and coaching as well, because the offboarding is pretty immediate. We wanted to make sure that we have those support systems in place for our student parents in our next cohort. And then of course, waivers for SNAP, Medicaid, SSDI, and SSI. We did manage to get through some of our advocacy groups, some waivers for SNAP benefits. But again, Medicaid and SSDI are kind of those bigger ones that need to be tackled, I believe, on a federal level. And then our biggest one was increasing our eligibility threshold at or below 400% of the federal poverty level, which is the same as our state's child care assistance. Santa Fe is a high cost of living area, And so being able to benefit more students, it would be great to be able to increase our eligibility threshold. So that would be an annual income for a family of 4 of about 124,000. And with that, we can go ahead. And I'll give it back to Catherine. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And I just want to again thank the speakers so much for their collaboration and their partnership. So Daryl, Samantha, Julie, Raquel, thank you so much for joining the panel. And we just have a list of resources. Like I mentioned, some websites where you can have more literature review and reports that dives into detail about the programs that we spoke about in this panel. And so with that, I just want to thank everybody and open the floor for questions or comments.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was really thorough, and I was really excited to be assigned as the moderator for this program, or for this presentation in Ann Arbor. We also recently established a guaranteed income program for entrepreneurs and small business owners. So it was really exciting to see and learn more information about how this is formatted in different locations as well. I think this is a very clear example of the power that comes when we invest in people, and also the opportunities of promoting agency and that sense of control over people's self in life. And I also really appreciated the point around the data aspect, that yes, it is important to have data, but it's also important to humanize that data. Each of those data points is a human being, is a human experience, is a human story. So definitely appreciate all of those factors. And I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. So we'll do maybe one from our panel and then one from the audience, and then return back to me for closing statements. So if we have any thoughts.
Just to play devil's advocate, I hate doing this, but I'd imagine there would be pushback, especially anything involved with money, and like potential criticism, such as this money could be used for drug abuse, it could be abused, wouldn't be used for the resources that you intend it for. So I was just wondering how you responded to those statements and criticisms, and how you proved that that wasn't the case, that it was used for what you intended it to be for.
Yeah, I can jump in to start. I think definitely, yes, this is one of the main arguments that comes up for guaranteed income. And I think for ours, like especially with young adults, is especially with former foster youth, we wanted folks to understand that this isn't about controlling how they spend the money, because for the individuals and the young adults, what they need to be learning is how to make the best decisions for themselves. And for any young person learning, a large part of that learning experience is going to be making mistakes. And so sometimes that's using the money on the wrong things, right? I got this money, like first we heard many stories, right? When they first got this money, it starts off with like, no, this is too good to be true and it's a dream. And then you get the money, and first thing you think about are like all the things that I want to buy that I want, even though I still have these needs, because this again is a population that has, experienced many times in their life where they couldn't get the things that they wanted, let alone a lot of their needs. So really normalizing for folks like, yes, we want the money to go to these specific areas and have these specific impacts, but we have to remember the human experience, as we've been talking about, right? And a large part of the human experience, especially for young people, is learning from your mistakes. And so really just like highlighting for folks that like, someone using the money on something that, that we didn't expect them to isn't always necessarily just the wrong use of the money. It just may be the way that that young person learns.
Yeah, and just to add to what, Daryl has mentioned, and plus co-sign everything that Daryl said, but also that we have to remember that thriving is about joy, right? It's not just about basic needs. I think we put a lot of emphasis on the basic needs, but as Daryl won, I think part of living is also wanting, and that's part of having joy, and we have to kind of honor that. The other thing too, though, I think is this. We have to question why we always want to police the behavior of those who may not necessarily come from money, but we never question how the rich spend their money, which we already know, right? I mean, like there have been so many cases of the rich not only mismanages funds in a way that's destructive to the community, but but kind of spending their money in less than savory ways. But having said that, I think like that double standard, we have to question why we have that, and why we police the behavior of one group and not scrutinize the behavior of another.
Yeah, and I would say all of the above. And then also, we all have the freedom to spend our money the way that we want to. And so, as Catherine had said, policing that in our participants just wasn't a part of what we wanted, part of what we were going to do. One of the interesting things that one of our city councilors had said in one of the meetings, a similar thing, they're gonna spend this on alcohol and partying. And I was like, you're talking about young parents here. And so we actually had a member in the audience who was a young parent, and he was like, I would love to have my kid join the city Little League, but I can't because I don't have extra money. And at that point, it totally changed the dynamic of the conversation because, if that person had extra money, they would be able to sign their kids up for the city Little League program. And that's how that person advocated that they wanted to spend their money. So that was also really helpful in those conversations.
I will say though, just to go back to data, that even though there is that assumption that people are going to spend their money, in which they can spend their money however they want to, I don't care. But even though there is that assumption, actually the data shows that the exact opposite happens. And when you give people who didn't have money, that they actually do end up spending it on things like housing and food. But again, like they don't have to, but they do end up spending it on necessities.
Thank you so much for those responses. And yeah, I feel like this program, it just reminds me of like the class, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs and everything. We're really just trying to get people to kind of get beyond that initial threshold so that they can start moving from survival to thriving overall. So I think this is a very important program, and it really shows, and I want to emphasize for the audience members as well too, when we think about the history that comes with this too, that when it comes to the economic oppression and disparities that many of these populations are facing, it's very intentional. So when we hear those dog whistles and pushback for it as well too, that is also a sign of where that's coming from, like the ignorance in those statements is coming from that piece too. So we not only have to combat that economic oppression, but also start presenting and reimagining some of those alternative narratives that need to be pushed forward to make sure that we can live in a better world and not continue to push forward those opportunities to just limit people's experiences, potential, and everything else. But yeah, I was super, super excited to see your presentation in the pool of policies that we were reviewing for this summit, and looking forward to seeing the newer developments that come with this as well. And with that, we will do like a quick round of applause for all of you as we finish out this policy summit. But yeah, thank you so much for your expertise and advocacy, and special thank you to Samantha and Raquel as well for sharing your experiences. It's really important that we, again, get to humanize this experience too. So thank you so much.